Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we cut through the overwhelming information of the modern world to give you the clearest, most impactful insights.
Yeah, we know you're busy, you're curious, and you want to be well-informed without drowning in data.
Exactly. And today, we're taking a slightly different turn. Instead of dissecting current events or the latest scientific breakthroughs, we're plunging into ancient wisdom.
A philosophy that maybe surprisingly feels more relevant now than ever.
That's right.
We're talking about Stoicism.
But maybe not the stoicism people think they know.
Right, not the common misconception of just a stiff upper lip or, grim endurance. This is a vibrant, expansive, and incredibly practical philosophy for living a good, happy, and truly meaningful life.
And the Stoics themselves, they really emphasized action, didn't they?
Absolutely. It was fundamentally about what you did, not what you said. It's a philosophy of action built on four core virtues: courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom.
Okay, so our mission today in this deep dive is to go beyond the abstract theories.
Yeah.
We've pulled from a rich collection of sources that really emphasize the lived experiences of the Stoics. Because these weren't just, academics shut away somewhere.
Not at all. They were men and, importantly, sometimes women from all walks of life. We're talking enslaved individuals, powerful emperors, merchants, generals.
People facing the same stuff we face, really.
Universal human challenges. Ambition, crushing loss, political corruption, even death itself.
And we're going to explore how their actions, their compromises, and maybe their ultimate choices can teach you about the art of living.
Yeah, and how this philosophy took root in ancient Athens and then profoundly shaped lives and empires across the Roman world. It's quite a journey.
It really is. Let's dive in. So let's unpack this. Our journey begins in Athens, the intellectual heart of the ancient world. And the very start of Stoicism, it begins with what sounds like a total disaster. Our first figure, Zeno the prophet.
Zeno of Kishon, yeah. He was from Cyprus, late 4th century BC. And he wasn't some, wandering sage initially. He was a wealthy Phoenician merchant.
Okay, a businessman.
A successful one. He'd invested heavily in Tyrian purple dye. This stuff was incredibly precious, like literally worth its weight in silver.
Wow.
And then disaster strikes. His ship, carrying all this valuable cargo, is lost in a shipwreck.
Just gone.
Completely gone. Imagine that. No insurance, no backup plan, just an enormous fortune vanished beneath the waves. Utter devastation for most people.
But his reaction, that's the key, right? It's completely counterintuitive.
Totally. He famously declared, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck."
Which is just an incredible statement.
Isn't it? That profound loss, that complete destruction of his external wealth became the unexpected catalyst. It sent him to Athens and put him directly onto the path of philosophy.
It almost sounds too perfect, like a fable. And you mentioned the sources sometimes conflict about his early life.
Yeah, there are slightly different accounts about his wealth and background, which adds to that kind of legendary quality. But the core story holds. A massive reversal of fortune became his turning point.
It really demonstrates that Stoic idea that the worst misfortune can actually be a catalyst for finding your true purpose, right?
Right.
Not in what you have, but how you respond.
Precisely. It forces you to look inward. So he gets to Athens and he finds a mentor.
Not just any mentor, though.
No, Crates of Thebes, a cynic philosopher famous for literally giving away his own fortune. He was known as the door opener, a guide for those genuinely seeking wisdom.
And Crates wasn't exactly gentle, was he?
Not at all. Our sources suggest Zeno was quite self-conscious, maybe a bit shy. Crates used tough love. There are stories of him making Zeno carry pots of lentil soup through crowds to break his self-consciousness. It worked. It helped him shed those anxieties and transform.
So even the founder needed a push. It shows that growth often comes from those challenging relationships.
Definitely. It pushes you beyond your comfort zone.
So what did Zeno ultimately teach? What was the goal? He talked about achieving a smooth flow of life. What did that actually mean?
It wasn't about avoiding challenges. It was about finding harmonious accord with your inner daemon, your guiding spirit, your conscience, maybe, and also with universal nature, with the way things actually are.
So acceptance, living in agreement with reality.
Exactly. Accepting what you can't control and finding peace within that. And his own life reflected this. He lived very simply.
Even though he came from wealth initially.
Right. His diet was mostly bread and honey, maybe occasional wine, lived with roommates, refused servants. Even when sick, stuck to his meager diet. He believed that once you get a taste for luxury, you just crave more.
Interesting. And he preferred a small group of friends.
Yeah, not big social gatherings. He was known for being witty, concise, very pragmatic in his communication. He's the one credited with saying, "Man was given 2 ears and only one mouth for a reason." Losing his wealth clearly taught him money wasn't the point.
And he taught in the agora, the marketplace. That feels significant for a former merchant.
It was a deliberate choice. He wanted to ground philosophy in everyday life, not hide it away. Right there, amidst the buying and selling, he discussed the true value of things.
Showing that philosophy wasn't just academic theory.
Precisely. It was a practical guide for living, a rational way of being that embraced both thinking and doing.
It's such a shame most of his writings are lost. His Republic sounds fascinating, challenging Plato.
It really is a loss. That vision of one community and one polity for everyone, a truly common life, incredibly forward-thinking. But we have fragments, like the core idea. The goal of life is to live in harmony with nature, which means to live according to virtue.
So that shipwreck wasn't just a personal pivot. It really was the symbolic start of Stoicism's focus on inner resilience over external fortune.
Absolutely. And from that foundation, we move to Cleanthes, the apostle.
Yeah.
His background couldn't be more different.
Right. Zeno lost wealth. Cleanthes started with none.
Exactly. Cleanthes, born in Assos, modern Turkey, around 330 BC, came from poverty. To study philosophy in Athens, he had to do intense manual labor.
What kind of labor?
Drawing water for a gardener during the day, crushing grain at a bakery all night. This wasn't just about survival, it showed incredible dedication.
And there's that story about him being taken to court.
Yeah, the Athenians were suspicious. Here's this guy studying philosophy all day, looks fit and healthy. How's he managing it? They thought maybe he was stealing.
So they dragged him before the magistrates.
Right. And Cleanthes' defense was simple. He just brought his employers, the gardener and the grain crusher, to testify about his hard work. He was acquitted and even got a reward for his honesty.
And even later, as a known philosopher, he kept working. He didn't just take donations.
No, he refused large gifts, even from kings. He kept up his labor. This embodies a key Stoic concept, Philoponia.
Philoponia. What's that exactly?
It's a marrow-deep dedication to honest labor, not just for money, but for self-improvement, for discipline, for the love of philosophy itself.
So the work was the philosophy, in a way.
In a very real way. He famously reported to a king who asked why he still drew water, "Is drawing water all I do? What? Do I not dig? Do I not water the garden? Or undertake any other labor for the love of philosophy?" It's like that character Lee in Steinbeck's East of Eden who found servitude perfect for a philosopher. Quiet time, observation, no distractions.
His commitment to just learning was also incredible. Almost 2 decades as Zeno's student.
Nearly 20 years at the Stoa Poikile, patiently soaking it all in physics, ethics, logic. It speaks volumes about his humility. No big ego there. You don't stay a student that long if you think you know it all.
And his frugality was legendary too, wasn't it? Writing on oyster shells.
That's the story. Supposedly used oyster shells and oxen shoulder blades because papyrus was too expensive, though despite that, he did manage to write over 50 books. He was famously ascetic, too. Sometimes went without a shirt under his cloak. Passers-by apparently applauded his indifference to discomfort. A Spartan once asked him if pain could be considered a good if you endured it for virtue.
And Cleanthes said,
He basically said, yes, that's music to my ears. It was all about building that internal strength through endurance.
He also handled public criticism incredibly well. That incident with the playwright, Sisytheus.
Oh, yeah. So Sisytheus attacks him from the stage, right in the middle of the play, insults him publicly.
And Cleanthes
Just sat there, stone-faced, didn't react at all. The audience was stunned by his composure. They ended up applauding him and booing the playwright off the stage.
Incredible self-control.
Absolutely. And when Sisytheus apologized later, Cleanthes just accepted it, saying, greater figures had suffered worse insults. He was very self-aware, even known to scold himself quietly in the street, an old man with gray hair and no wits, but never abusively, just keeping himself in check. It's pure Stoic practice. Control your reaction no matter the provocation.
He preferred listening, quoting, silence, silence. But he became crucial for communicating Stoic ideas, right? Especially as the school grew and faced attacks.
He did. Zeno relied on him more and more to articulate and defend their principles. It's a tragedy his books are lost titles like On Marriage, On Gratitude, on the thesis that virtue is the same in a man and a woman. They show a mind deeply engaged with ethics and practical living.
And he lived to be 100. Possibly the oldest Stoic?
Likely, yes. 100 years old. Kept his humor, too. joked near the end that he was ready to go, but since he could still write and read, he might as well stick around.
And his death was peaceful.
Very. He started fasting to treat inflamed gums and just decided to continue the fast, a graceful exit.
So the lesson from Cleanthes seems to be about that deep dedication, the Philoponia, and everything humble work, study, enduring hardship.
Exactly. Virtue wasn't just grand ideas. It was persistent, honest effort, day in, day out, solidifying that practical, disciplined image of Stoicism.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing in those early days. There was internal conflict, wasn't there? Led by Aristo, the challenger.
Oh, definitely. Aristo of Chios, born early 3rd century BC, he really shook things up, challenged that early teamwork vibe. Seneca was still writing about these debates centuries later.
What was the core issue? He disagreed with Zeno and Cleanthes about something fundamental.
Yes, about the role of precepts. Practical rules for everyday life, how to treat your spouse, how to raise kids, how to manage slaves, that sort of thing.
And Aristo thought these were.
He famously called them advice from old women, derided them. He argued that true virtue didn't come from following a list of rules. It came from deep training, internalized principles, leading to flawless intuition.
Like an expert athlete who just knows the right move without thinking.
Precisely his analogy. A javelin thrower doesn't consult a manual mid-throw. Their expertise is ingrained through practice. Aristo wanted the big principles, the 10 commandments, you might say, but not detailed instructions for every situation.
That's a bold stance, especially for a young philosophy trying to provide practical guidance.
Very bold. And it put him directly against Zeno's idea of preferred indifference.
Things like health or wealth, not essential for virtue, but generally better to have.
Right. Zeno saw that gray area. It's not morally better to be rich, but it's generally preferable to be healthy. Aristo rejected this completely. No gray areas, black and white only, absolute indifference to everything between pure virtue and pure vice.
No nuance.
None. He argued a wise man would choose sickness over health if health meant serving a tyrant.
It sounds noble, almost heroic, right? Like a general burning his maps, relying only on instinct.
But potentially disastrous in practice.
Cicero pointed that out. Without being able to prefer health over sickness or wealth over poverty, even just slightly, the whole of life would be thrown into chaos.
Yeah.
How do you make any practical decision?
It's a very seductive idea, though, that you can just know the right thing, that you don't need guidance. It appeals to the ego. How did this affect his relationships with Zeno and Cleanthes? It caused friction big time. Sources say Aristo was contrarian, talked a lot, deliberately ignoring Zeno's 2 ears, 1 mouth advice. Zeno got exasperated, apparently once snapped, "You're a babbler, and I suspect your father was drunk when he sired you."
Ouch.
Yeah. Aristo even wrote books attacking Cleanthes directly.
And wasn't there a famous incident that kind of exposed the flaw in his intuition-only approach?
The twin trick, yes. Other Stoics wanted to prove him wrong. They had one identical twin deposit money with Aristo. Then the other twin came to collect it.
And Aristo, relying purely on his supposed wisdom,
Gave the money to the wrong twin, stupidly fell for it. It was humiliating, but it perfectly showed the limits of relying solely on intuition over basic practical rules, like maybe checking some ID. It revealed a huge philosophical gap.
and he went even further, didn't he? Discarding parts of the Stoic curriculum.
He did. He wanted to ditch logic and physics altogether. Argued only ethics mattered, only virtue. He dismissed logic as intricate but useless, like a spider's web.
Just gut feeling and virtue.
Pretty much. His ideas were mostly rejected by the next generation of Stoics, seen as too extreme, too impractical.
But interestingly, he still had an influence later on, didn't he? On Marcus Aurelius.
Surprisingly, yes. Years later, a young Marcus Aurelius read Aristo and found him both delighting and tormenting. He saw in Aristo this powerful call to practice virtue, to train it until it became second nature, not just something you memorize rules about.
So it pushed Marcus towards embodying the philosophy.
Exactly. Marcus felt inspired to just do it, to live it, even while recognizing the flaws in Aristo's overall system.
So Aristo, even in his dissent, helped refine Stoicism, highlighting that tension between absolute principle and practical reality.
And the danger of being too rigid, too black and white. The surprising lesson is that seeking absolute simplicity can actually undermine practical wisdom. You need both the core principles and the guidance for navigating life's messy gray areas.
Which brings us to the person who really systematized and defended Stoicism, Chrysippus, the fighter.
Chrysippus, yeah. Born in Soli, late 3rd century BC, he started out as an endurance runner, competing in the Delicos race.
An endurance runner. How does that connect?
Well, think about it. The discipline, Pushing your limits, measuring yourself against an internal standard, enduring discomfort, it overlaps perfectly with core Stoic themes. He even developed a no-shoving model for competition.
Meaning?
Strive to win, absolutely, but never by tripping or unfairly hindering your rivals. He applied this to life. It's okay to pursue useful things, but not if it means depriving others.
And like Zeno and Cleanthes, circumstances pushed him to Athens.
Yes, fear of tyrannical regimes back home, seeking something better. By the time he arrived, Zeno and Cleanthes had built the foundation, but Stoicism was under attack.
So Chrysippus became the defender. His statue had that inscription, right? The cleaver to the Academy's knots.
Exactly, the cleaver. Stoicism was popular, which made it a target for rivals, Platonists, Epicureans, Aristotelians. They were constantly poking holes in the doctrines.
And Cleanthes wasn't really the type for aggressive debate.
Cleanthes often responded with silence or a quick quip. But the school needed more. It needed someone to provide robust intellectual defense, clarify the teachings, systematize everything, especially after Aristo's challenges and those he inspired.
So Chrysippus stepped up.
He did. He wrote replies to Aristo's attacks. There's a story of him stopping someone quibbling with Cleanthes, shouting that he was ready for the argument. He was competitive, aggressive, proud. He was in it to win, believing philosophy was a fair intellectual battle.
This dedication led to that famous line, "If there had been no Chrysippus, there would be no Stoa."
It underscores his essential role. Maybe thankless in some ways, but absolutely crucial for consolidating the school, ensuring its survival, and giving it a consistent message. He became the third head of the school around age 49.
And he took the teachings public, right? More so than Zeno or Cleanthes.
Yeah, he lectured in bigger venues like the Odeon, even went into the Lyceum, Aristotle's old stomping grounds, taking the fight directly to the enemy's camp, so to speak.
And his approach was different stylistically, too. Less poetry, more logic.
Definitely. While Cleanthes used poetry, Chrysippus insisted on rigorous logical argument, formal proof. His output was just staggering.
How much we're talking?
Over 705 volumes attributed to him, hundreds on logic alone. He obsessed over things like the liar paradox. His logical questions was even found in the ruins of an Epicurean library at Herculaneum.
Wow, so he was seen as the master logician.
The ancients literally said, as Homer was to poetry, Chrysippus was to logic. He was also passionate about literature, quoted Euripides constantly, and he was meticulous about citing sources, bringing a new level of academic rigor.
Yet, despite this intellectual firepower, he lived simply.
Very simply. One servant supposedly wrote 500 lines a day, declined invitations from kings to focus on his work. He truly lived by the idea that a wise man can make use of whatever comes his way but is in want of nothing. That gave him freedom.
Oh, so?
He refused to sell his work or charge for advice. He thought it cheapened philosophy, compromised his independence. His famous line, "If you accept money from a king, then you must humor him."
Makes sense. But was he maybe too intellectual? Too obscure?
Epictetus later criticized his writing style as overly complex. Yeah. Joked that if Chrysippus hadn't written so obscurely, his students would have nothing to brag about understanding. But despite that, his core insights were powerful and endured.
And he wasn't just a thinking machine. He had personal life, too.
Yes, he was apparently a loving family man, took in his sister's sons, Aristocreon and Philocrates, dedicated many books to Aristocreon.
He also developed a really important ethical idea, sympathia, building on Zeno's vision.
Yes, sympathy, the idea of the interconnectedness of all people, our shared citizenship in the cosmos. It argues we're all part of a single rational whole, a crucial ethical development.
Though, ironically, maybe the early Stoics didn't always practice it perfectly amongst themselves.
Huh. True enough, those rivalries could get pretty intense.
And his death. There's an amusing story.
Possibly apocryphal, but yeah. Supposedly, after a lecture, he drank some undiluted sweet wine, got dizzy, and died 5 days later in his early 70s. Another version says he died laughing too hard at his own joke about a donkey eating figs.
Laughing too hard. Not a bad way to go.
Not at all. Chrysippus really shows us that even the most inspiring philosophy needs a fighter, someone to clarify, codify, and defend its principles. His rigorous defense was just as vital as Zeno's initial inspiration.
So as the 2nd century BC begins, Stoicism is about 100 years old. Who takes over after the fighter? This brings us to another Zeno.
Zeno of Tarsus, yes. It fits that Stoic idea of cyclical history. The same thing happens again and again. We're all just role players. So it's fitting that the leader for the next century is also named Zeno.
And he likely took over because Chrysippus' intended successor was too old or had died.
That seems to be the case. Dioscurides was probably the expected heir, but Zeno of Tarsus stepped in.
And his role was different from Chrysippus's, less about fighting, more about...
Stability. Maintenance. He seems to have been a stabilizing figure, smoothing over the philosophical debates and conflicts of the previous era. He might side with Cleanthes on one point, Chrysippus on another, but apparently without much personal ego or seeking conflict himself. Though he did write at least one book against a rival philosopher.
So not necessarily a groundbreaking thinker, but providing something the school needed at that moment.
Exactly. He wasn't flashy, didn't need to write hundreds of books or give huge lectures. One source basically calls him boring enough to just calm things down and pass the philosophy on intact.
That quiet, maybe unglamorous role of just keeping things going.
Which is absolutely crucial. Stoicism was established, the boat floated, as the saying goes. Zeno of Tarsus just needed to keep it steady and pass it on.
And the timing here is really important, isn't it? With Rome rising.
Critical. Greece was in decline. Rome was the new power. Zeno's quieter leadership helped Stoicism pivot, shifting its focus from Athens, its birthplace, towards meeting the needs of this burgeoning Roman Empire.
So his legacy isn't about fame, but function.
Right. He's mostly forgotten, maybe remembered as a transitional figure. But a true Stoic wouldn't care about that. What matters is he did his job when it needed to be done. He stabilized the ship and prepared Stoicism for its Roman Golden Age.
It's a great lesson in the power of quiet stewardship. Impact isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just about diligently preserving and passing on something valuable during a time of change.
Well said.
Okay, so Stoicism is making its way to Rome, and its focus is shifting. It's becoming less about internal debates and more about engaging with the world. This brings us to Diogenes, the diplomat. What prompts this big shift onto the political stage?
It's a specific event, actually. In 155 BC, Diogenes of Babylon, who was the head of the Stoa at the time, gets sent on this incredible diplomatic mission to Rome.
A diplomatic mission.
For a philosopher.
Exactly. Athens had been slapped with this massive fine, 500 talents by Roman magistrates. It was crippling. So in desperation, Athens sends its best minds, not soldiers or lawyers, but philosophers. Diogenes led the delegation, which even included leaders from rival schools like the Academy. Wow. Talk about high stakes for philosophy.
It really was Stoicism's first major foray out of the lecture hall and into the corridors of power, a kind of cultural exchange, but with serious political implication.
And Diogenes himself, he wasn't Athenian originally.
No, he was from Seleucia, near modern Baghdad, studied under Chrysippus in Athens. And important to note, he's not Diogenes the cynic, the guy who lived in a barrel. This Diogenes was pragmatic, engaged.
Plutarch mentions he was inspired by reading about Zeno, the founder, that theme again, example over words.
Right. It's not what you say, it's the example that you set. And Diogenes lived up to it in Rome. His conduct during the public lectures and Senate addresses was apparently very composed, very diplomatic.
Unlike some of his colleagues.
Definitely unlike Carneades, the head of the Academy, who was apparently quite abrasive, even supposedly called Rome a city of fools, and then tried to blame Diogenes.
Oh boy, how did Diogenes handle that?
He stayed calm. There's a famous story of a teenager spitting on him. His response was just, "I'm not angry, but I'm not sure whether I should be." Just shrugged it off. He knew too much was riding on the mission to get sidetracked by personal insults.
And the mission worked.
It was a huge success. The fine was drastically reduced, down to 100 talents. This really boosted the reputation of the philosophers, especially Diogenes, in Rome.
Even though some Romans, like Cato the Elder, were famously skeptical of Greek philosophy.
Ironically, yes, Cato disapproved, but his own great-grandson, Cato the Younger, would become one of Stoicism's greatest practitioners. It shows the influence they had.
This mission also seems to mark a shift in Stoic political thinking itself.
A crucial shift. Before this, Stoic political ideas were often quite abstract, utopian think Zeno's or Chrysippus's lost republics. Diogenes, though, saw the reality of Roman politics firsthand, the confused and flawed people, the messy compromises.
So he pushed the philosophy towards practicality.
Exactly. Towards a more practical understanding of politics, public service, how to operate within the existing system, not just dream of ideal ones. Life wasn't Plato's Republic. It was Rome.
Another figure whose writings are mostly lost, unfortunately.
Tragically, yes. Papyri found at Herculaneum suggests he was incredibly widely read, maybe even more cited than Plato or Aristotle in some circles. But his legacy is clear. He helped transform Stoicism from an academic pursuit into a concrete political force, ready to engage with the Roman world.
Diogenes really shows that wisdom needs to step out of the ivory tower sometimes. True influence comes from grappling with the messy world as it is.
Absolutely, adapting principles to practical action.
Following Diogenes, his student Antipater, the ethicist, takes over. His focus seems to shift again more towards everyday ethics.
That's right, Antipater of Tarsus. If Diogenes brought philosophy into public life, Antipater brought it deep into private life, into the home. He was known for being incredibly truthful and honest, a real contrast to Carneades, who could argue any side of an issue.
And he focused on very human, relatable questions.
Yes, bringing Stoicism right down to earth. One of his most significant contributions was championing marriage and family life.
Which was unusual for early Stoics.
Very unusual. Zeno had no heirs, Cleanthes was maybe too frugal for a wife, Chrysippus was dedicated to his work, but Antipater argued passionately that you haven't tasted the truest and genuine goodwill until you've experienced having a spouse and children.
That's quite a shift.
It really is. The philosopher Michel Foucault even credits Antipater with pioneering a new idea of marriage, not just a contract, but a deep blending of souls, a conjugal unit or oikos, that forms the foundation, the keystone of a good city and world. This idea eventually influenced Christian thought, too.
He also nuanced the Stoic stance on right and wrong, didn't he?
Yeah.
Moving away from the idea that all mistakes were equal.
Yes, he loosened the absolutism. The early Stoics sometimes argued that, technically, all errors, all sins were equal. Antipater brought common sense back in. He used an analogy. Being 1 mile away from your destination isn't the same as being 100 miles away. He stopped minimizing the importance of everyday choices, who to marry, how to dress, what to eat. Practical ethics became central, a guide to living.
And he introduced that powerful metaphor of the archer.
Yes. It's such a great image for the pursuit of virtue. You, the archer, you train diligently, you aim carefully, you release the arrow to the best of your ability.
But you don't control everything after that.
Exactly. Wind, unseen obstacles, countless factors outside your control affect where the arrow lands. Your true worth, Antipater taught, isn't measured by hitting the bullseye every time. It's measured by the quality of your effort, your training, the virtuous intent behind your aim. You focus on what is in your control, the process, not the outcome.
That takes the pressure off needing to be perfect.
It does. And his ethics tackled very real dilemmas. Who should you marry? Work or family? How do you balance them? What makes a business deal fair? He applied the Stoic idea of oikiosis here.
Oikiosis, that sense of connection, of shared interest with others.
Right. Our natural affinity for others, for the common good. He argued our interests are fundamentally connected to those of our fellow humans.
How did that play out in, say, business?
He stressed that our duty to the common good often comes first. Cicero preserved Antipater's argument. Your interest shall be the interest of the community, and conversely, that the interest of the community shall be your interest.
So if you're selling a house with, say, hidden termite damage.
Your personal interest is getting the best price, but the community interest, the buyer's interest, is knowing the truth. Antipater would argue your primary obligation is to the buyer, to the common good, even if it costs you money. It anticipates Marcus Aurelius's later line, what's bad for the hive is bad for the bee.
Antipater really humanized Stoicism, bringing it into the nitty-gritty of family, community, daily choices. Showing virtue isn't just abstract, it's lived.
He paved the way for its broader appeal by making it relatable and practical.
Which leads us to Panetius, the connector. His life seems to really embody Stoicism's move to Rome.
Panetius of Rhodes, born mid-2nd century BC, is absolutely central to Stoicism's coming of age in Rome. If Diogenes opened the door, Panetius walked through it and made Stoicism feel at home there.
He had important connections, didn't he? Particularly with Scipio Aemilianus.
Crucial connections. He was part of the Scipionic Circle, a philosophical club around Scipio, one of Rome's greatest generals who was also deeply interested in Greek thought. This circle became a breeding ground for influential Stoics and a generation of leaders, like Publius Rutilius Rufus, who we'll get to.
Scipio embodied that Roman ideal, skilled in both arms and studies.
And Panetius himself was quite cosmopolitan. A born globalist, you could say. Very different from some of the earlier, more Athens-centric Stoics. He traveled widely, studied in Pergamum and Rome, served in the Navy, accompanied Scipio on missions. He could navigate different cultures in a very modern way.
He influenced Marcus Aurelius's idea of being a citizen of the world.
Seems likely, yet interestingly, he politely declined Athenian citizenship later in life, saying one city was enough for a sensible man. A nice Stoic touch.
He went on a major trip with Scipio to the east.
Yes, around 140 BC, a nearly 2-year fact-finding mission across Egypt, Syria, Greece, observing, as Plutarch put it, the violence and lawlessness of men.
And there's that funny story from Alexandria about the king.
King Ptolemy VIII, who was apparently quite obese and struggled to walk. After their visit, Scipio supposedly whispered to Panetius, "Already the Alexandrians have received some benefit from our visit, for it is owing to us that they have seen their king walk." A bit of dry Roman wit, but it shows their keen observation of power and its effects.
Canisius's major work was Concerning Appropriate Actions, focused on ethics in public life.
Yes, though sadly unfinished. He wrote it while Scipio was dealing with major corruption cases and political turmoil, like the Gracchus brothers affair. This actually put Stoics on opposing sides. Panetius took a more conservative stance, upholding order, while another Stoic, Blasius, advised the revolutionary Gracchi. It shows Stoicism was now deeply embedded in real, complex politics. Cicero considered Panetius's book the best discussion of moral duties ever written.
He also developed this framework of the four roles, prosopon, for guiding ethical choices.
A very practical and insightful framework. He said we have to balance duties from 4 layers. 1, our shared humanity, rationality, virtue. 2, our unique individual nature, our daemon or calling. 3, our social roles, family, job, citizen. 4, our personal choices and commitments, promises we make.
So for a soldier, it's balancing duty to humanity, personal calling, role as soldier, and specific oaths.
Exactly. You navigate these often competing layers to determine the appropriate action in any given situation. It's very nuanced.
And he had another powerful metaphor, the pancratist, the mixed martial artist.
Yes. He saw life not as target practice like Antiquitator's archer, or pure intuition like Aristo's thrower, but as actual combat. Violent, forceful, unpredictable.
So you need to be ready.
Always ready and alert. Standing guard, arms up, prepared for sudden rangers and blows of fortune, using judgment and forethought like your arms and hands to defend yourself. It emphasizes constant preparedness for hardship. This metaphor pops up later in Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus.
He also made contributions to legal ethics, defending guilty clients.
He argued pragmatically that a good lawyer could defend someone guilty as long as they weren't utterly depraved. This principle, ensuring everyone gets a defense, became a cornerstone of Western legal systems for millennia.
And he differed from earlier Stoics on whether virtue alone was enough for happiness.
He did. He believed you also needed basics like health, strength, some material resources. The good life, for Panetius, was found in actively balancing and integrating all these competing obligations, interests, and talents, not just pure virtue in isolation.
His friendship with Scipio must have meant Scipio's death was a major blow.
Almost certainly. He would have had to apply his own teachings about preparing for the loss of loved ones by remembering their mortality. Despite his main work being unfinished, his influence was immense. He really adapted Stoicism into a comprehensive, practical framework for ethical living in the complex Roman world, bridging philosophy and leadership.
Panetius truly connected the dots, making Stoicism ready for its Roman prime. Which leads us to someone who tried to live those principles under intense pressure. Publius Rutilius Rufus, the last honest man.
Rutilius Rufus. Yeah, in the context of Roman politics, which, let's be honest, was often a dirty business, attracting ego and corruption, he really stands out. As Mark Twain said, an honest man in politics shines more than he would elsewhere. Rutilius shone brightly.
His integrity showed early, didn't it? Refusing to bribe his way into office.
Absolutely. Back in 115 BC, he just wouldn't do it, even though it meant he lost the election for consul. And then, instead of just accepting it, he brought corruption charges against his opponent, Scaurus, who then, predictably, countercharged Rutilius. It set the stage for later conflict.
So he was committed to honesty, even when it hurt him politically.
Deeply. As a public servant and military figure, he was known for being meticulously honest. He tried to reform bankruptcy laws. He spearheaded efforts to protect Greek provincials in Asia Minor from being gouged by Roman tax collectors, the publicani.
Applying that Stoic okiosis, that care for the common good, even for non-Romans.
Exactly. He saw it as his duty to stop injustice, which of course made powerful enemies among those profiting from that injustice.
And then they used the very old trick against him.
The classic. They falsely accused him of the very crime he was trying to stop extorting the provincials. The people behind it were the actual extortionists. The jury was stacked. Powerful figures like Marius likely worked against him behind the scenes simply because his integrity was an annoyance, a constant reproach to their own corruption.
It sounds incredibly unjust. How did he react?
With a noble stance, as the sources say. He didn't break. His property was seized. He was condemned to exile. But when given the choice of where to go,
He chose Smyrna, the very place he was accused of defrauding.
with stone-hard determination, an incredible act of defiance and principle. And Smyrna, knowing his true character, welcomed him with open arms, even offered him citizenship. He was living Panatius's pancretist metaphor, taking the unexpected blow, enduring it without complaint.
And he never went back to Rome, even when he could have.
No. Sulla later invited him back, but he refused. He stayed in Smyrna, wrote his history of Rome in Greek. He never seemed to question if doing the right thing was worth it, never seemed bitter. His job, as he saw it, was simply to be good, regardless of the consequences or what others did.
Letting his true colors shine, as Marcus Aurelius would say.
Exactly. Seneca later reflected on the injustice, grieving that fortune pays her rewards so unjustly, but he implies the real question: who would you rather be? Rutilius, unjustly exiled but with his integrity intact, or his corrupt accusers?
Rutilius remained this enduring symbol of moral courage against corruption. His life teaches that integrity isn't about reward, it's its own reward, an unshakable force even when it costs you everything.
Absolutely, a powerful example.
From that intense focus on integrity, we broaden out again with Posidonius the Explorer, a truly multifaceted figure.
Posidonius, yeah. From Apamea in Syria, Panetius's student, he was incredibly wide-ranging. Explorer, scientist, historian, politician, strategist, a complete man, a real philosopher, deeply engaged with the world, a total contrast to the Epicurean ideal of withdrawal.
His classroom was the world itself.
That's a great way to put it. He learned from observing nature, the tides, the stars, and from observing people in the marketplace, in politics. Seneca said he lived as if the whole world was a temple of the gods.
And he was politically active too.
Very. Rose to the highest office in Rhodes, undertook diplomatic missions to Rome around 86 BC.
He had a chilling encounter with the Roman general Marius on his deathbed.
Yes, a powerful moment. He observed Marius, consumed by ambition and fear even in death, delusional, meeting this ignoble end. Posidonius contrasted it sharply with the peaceful death of a philosopher like Antipater. His insight was cutting. Marius commanded armies, but ambition commanded Marius, a stark warning about unchecked desire for power.
And he significantly developed that idea of sympathia, cosmic interconnectedness.
He really deepened it. Building on Chrysippus, Posidonius saw the entire cosmos as one living, sentient being, everything interconnected through cosmic sympathy.
Meaning every person is connected.
Literally on the same team, he believed, like individual cells or organs in one body. We exist in collaboration. His scientific observations, astronomy, geography, tides, all reinforced this sense of an underlying providential order governing the universe. It made the abstract idea tangible.
His wide-ranging studies gave him a realistic view of people, though.
Realistic, maybe even disillusioned, as one source puts it. He saw how luxury and power could rot a person. He mentored the young Cicero, who affectionately called him our Posidonius.
And he tried to advise Pompey.
Met with Pompey, the rising general, gave him that classic advice, essentially, be the best, always superior to others, meaning morally superior. But Pompey, driven by his insane love of a false glory, tragically missed the point.
Posidonius also taught about the internal struggle.
Yes, the battle with the irrational part of the soul, the constant effort to live by truth, promote order, and choose which part of ourselves we yield to.
Another Stoic whose vast writings are mostly lost.
A huge loss, 52 volumes of history alone. But he was immensely influential in his time, and for centuries after, cited by figures like St. Augustine. His own peaceful death at 84 stands in stark contrast to Marius's tormented end.
Posidonius really broadens the scope philosophy, engaging with science, politics, the cosmos, human nature, the philosopher as a complete, engaged individual.
Exactly, grappling with all of it.
But, as we know, not everyone who identified as Stoic lived up to the ideals. Which brings us to Diotimus, the Vicious, a cautionary tale.
A stark one. Diotimus is almost a ghost in the historical record, a cipher, known almost entirely for a single act of indisputable malice, an act completely at odds with Stoic principles.
What did he do?
Sometime around the turn of the 1st century BC, he forged over 50 obscene, licentious letters and attributed them to Epicurus, the founder of the rival Epicurean school.
Why? Just to slander him.
Exactly, to paint Epicurus as this depraved maniac and discredit his whole philosophy. And honestly, that reputation, that smear, still clings to Epicurus in some ways today.
It's just so pointless and petty, isn't it?
Hmm.
Especially given both schools aimed in their own ways at a good life.
It's profoundly ironic, deeply unstoic. You imagine someone like Rutilius Rufus hearing about this as a supposed fellow philosopher behaving like that? It's baffling.
Did he get away with it?
No. Zeno of Sidon, the head of the Epicureans at the time, tracked him down, sued him. Diotimus was sentenced maybe to death, though a heavy fine or exile is probably more likely. Certainly faced public shame.
So Diotimus serves as proof that philosophical labels don't guarantee virtue.
Precisely. A powerful cautionary tale. Stoics were human, hardly perfect. It shows how one bad decision, one snap decision made in the moment, can undermine everything. Philosophical training isn't immunity from acting badly.
He's the negative example that reinforces the principles he violated. A reminder that living virtuously is an active, constant struggle.
Well put. You have to choose it, moment by moment.
Okay, so the Republic falls, Augustus rises. This is a massive shift in Roman politics. How did Stoicism adapt to this new imperial reality? Did they just give up on influencing power?
Not at all. The Stoics who lived through that transition, they accepted the reality they couldn't change the end of the Republic, but they didn't withdraw. They felt it was their obligation to serve this state, even under an emperor. Their goal became trying to guide that power, to mold young Octavian into Augustus Caesar.
And Q figures emerged as advisors, like Athenodorus.
Athenodorus Canaanites, yes. A Stoic from Tarsus, studied under Posidonius, he became Octavian's tutor, teaching him politics, law, rhetoric, but subtly weaving in Stoic principles, preparing him for the immense power he would wield.
He's famous for that ghost story he used to teach Octavian a lesson, renting a haunted house.
That's the one. A supposedly haunted mansion in Athens. Athenodorus rents it, stays up calmly reading, isn't scared by the rattling chains and apparition. He just calmly marks the spot where the ghost disappears.
And the next day,
has the spot dug up. They find human bones, improperly buried. He has them given a proper public burial, and the haunting stops.
so the lesson for young Octavian was,
That even the scariest situations can be resolved with reason and courage. Don't be ruled by superstition or fear. Investigate rationally. A perfect Stoic lesson delivered through a gripping story.
what else did he emphasize in his teaching?
Temperance, wisdom, diligent spouts, zealous effort. He advised Octavian's sister Octavia to combat grief by busying herself with practical matters, and he stressed that leisure, time for reflection, euthymia, was also crucial for well-being. It wasn't all work.
And his famous final advice to Augustus about anger, the alphabet trick.
Classic piece of practical stoicism. Whenever you feel yourself getting angry, Caesar, don't say or do anything until you've repeated the 24 letters of the alphabet to yourself. Simple, effective. Augustus apparently valued it so much he begged Athenodorus to stay on for another year, which he did.
Then there was Arius Didymus. His name sounds less peaceful.
Warlike twin, ironically, for a philosopher who became a symbol of peace and stability under Augustus. But Arius offered tougher, more pragmatic advice.
Including that really controversial council about Caesarion.
Yes, advising Octavian to execute Caesarion, Caesar's son, with the Cleopatra. His reasoning, blunt and maybe ruthless. It's not good to have too many Caesars.
A brutal calculation to prevent future civil war.
Mhm.
That's a heavy decision for a Stoic.
It's deeply ethically complex. Arius likely saw it as a dirty business, a necessary evil to secure peace after decades of bloodshed. A pragmatic choice, however morally troubling.
Arius had huge influence, didn't he? Even turned down a governorship.
Immense influence. He declined becoming governor of Egypt because he felt he had more sway right there in Augustus's inner circle. Augustus reportedly valued him as much as his top general, Agrippa.
And he wrote that famous consolation letter to Empress Livia.
A profoundly moving letter on the death of her son Drusus. Livia apparently found it more comforting than anything else. He urged resilience, not resignation, telling her to focus on the living, on endurance. There is nothing that fastens such a reproach on fortune as resignation. Powerful stuff.
His surviving writings also helped systematize Stoic virtues.
Yes, particularly was 4 cardinal virtues. Wisdom, phronesis, self-control, sophrosune, justice, dikaiosune, and bravery, Andrea. The very virtues Marcus Aurelius would later revere.
Though Arius had that rather stark view of people as either wise or fools.
He did, which makes you wonder where acts like advising the killing of Caesarion fit in that black and white picture. Maybe political expediency needed its own category.
But Augustus himself seemed to embody that stoic work ethic, Philipponia.
He did seem incredibly industrious, suggesting his teachers had a real impact. Though Marcus Aurelius later reflected on the mortality of Augustus's entire court, Arius, Athenodorus, Augustus himself all gone, a reminder of shared humanity and the limits of power.
So Athenodorus and Arius show stoicism right at the heart of imperial power, grappling with those tough moral compromises needed to shape leaders and maintain stability.
It's a fascinating, complex picture of philosophy meeting real politic.
But not all Stoics under the emperors were advisors. Some stood out in opposition, like Agrippinus. You called him swashbuckling.
Yeah, maybe a bit dramatic, but Paconius Agrippinus was definitely a distinctive figure. In an empire increasingly defined by corruption under emperors like Claudius Nero, anyone living by strict Stoic principles, as Agrippinus did, would naturally stand out.
He had that striking metaphor about being the red thread.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to be the red. That small and brilliant portion which causes the rest to appear comely and beautiful, be like the majority of people. And if I do that, how shall I any longer be the red? It's about radical authenticity, refusing to blend in or compromise your principles, even facing death. Especially poignant given his own father had been unjustly executed under Tiberius.
But this wasn't about ego for him.
Epictetus, who admired him greatly, said no. Agrippinus never praised himself, but used to blush even if someone else praised him. His distinctiveness came from principle, not attention-seeking. As governor of Crete and Cyrene, he was known for his integrity when others were enriching themselves.
And he had that unusual approach to sentencing criminals, trying to persuade them it was proper.
Acting as a curator and guardian, Epictetus said, like a doctor explaining why surgery is necessary. It shows a deep, if perhaps unusual, commitment to reason and justice, even in punishment.
He was also very decisive morally.
Yeah.
That story about Nero's banquet.
Right. Another philosopher is agonizing, should I go, shouldn't I go? Agrippinus' response is immediate. If you're even thinking about it, you should go.
Meaning?
Meaning for Agrippinus, it wasn't even a question. Compromising with Nero wasn't an option. There was no hemming and hawing about the right thing, no calculating risks and benefits. Character is fate. You decide clearly, cleanly. If you have to deliberate about attending a tyrant's party, you've already lost the plot.
That's uncompromising. How did he face his own trial under Nero?
With incredible calmness, accused of conspiracy. While the Senate debates his fate, he's apparently working out, then taking a cold bath.
Just going about his routine.
Completely. When the verdict comes exile, he calmly asks, banishment or death? Here's exile, and then suggests they head off for lunch in Aricia, the first town on the road out of Rome. Basically, okay, let's get this exile show on the road. His famous line. I am not a hindrance to myself. External events wouldn't disrupt his inner state.
He even wrote eulogies for his own misfortunes.
Composed a eulogy upon it for anything bad that happened, fever, exile, whatever, just accepting life as it was, refusing to be broken. Agrippinus truly embodies that radical Stoic autonomy, uncompromising character, even joy in the face of tyranny. A bright red thread.
His life really teaches that ultimate freedom is internal, refusing to be defined or broken by anything outside yourself. Character is fate.
A powerful lesson. And from Agrippinus' clarity, we move to perhaps the most complex and debated Stoic of the imperial age, Seneca.
Seneca. Born into wealth, tutored by a Stoic, Attalus, he learned early lessons about temperance.
Yes. Born around 4 BC into a wealthy family, Attalus taught him about sin, errors, and the evils of life. Seneca took it to heart, adopted lifelong habits like giving up oysters and mushrooms, practicing frugality despite his background. He also suffered from ill health, likely tuberculosis, which brought him close to suicide early on and led to a long exile in Egypt.
What was the key lesson he took from Attalus?
Practical self-improvement. Attalus taught that the goal of philosophy study was to take away with him some one good thing every day. He should return home a sounder man.
This led to Seneca's famous journaling practice.
Exactly. Reviewing his day each evening, pleading his cause before the bar of self, holding himself accountable. He'd note his mistakes and gently but firmly correct himself. See that you don't do that again, but now I forgive you.
His health issues in exile also led him to think deeply about death.
Constantly. It's a pervasive theme in his writings, that famous line. This is our big mistake, to think we look forward toward death. Most of death is already gone. Whatever time has passed is owned by death.
A chillingly Stoic perspective. But his life took a sharp turn when he became tutor to Nero.
A pivotal and ultimately tragic role. Agrippina, Nero's mother, chose him. His job was officially teaching rhetoric, law, political strategy, but he tried to sneak in Stoic principles, preparing young Nero for the immense challenge of being emperor.
And for a while, it seemed to work. The golden years of Nero's reign.
The first 5 years or so, under the guidance of Seneca and the Praetorian prefect Burrus, Rome was relatively well run. But it was fragile. Nero's paranoia and cruelty grew.
The poisoning of Britannicus, the attempts on his mother Agrippina's life.
Yes, Nero's dark side emerged. Neglecting state affairs for his artistic pretensions, ordering murders, it became horrific.
Which brings us back to that huge question. Why did Seneca stay? Why didn't he walk away from this increasingly monstrous emperor?
It's the central dilemma of Seneca's life, debated for centuries. Was it fear? Nero was vindictive. Was it a genuine belief he could still exert some positive influence, moderate the worst? Or was it, as the historian Dio Cassius suggested, a kind of tacit compromise among powerful people just trying to survive, satisfied if they might manage it with moderation and still preserve their lives?
A pact of mutual leniency, almost.
Perhaps. He seemed to cling to the hope he could do some good, maybe prevent even worse atrocities by staying close, a deeply compromising position.
He did eventually try to withdraw, offering up his wealth.
Yes, in 62 AD, he made a futile attempt, offered Nero all his vast riches, saying, "I cannot any longer bear the burden of my wealth. I crave assistance." Nero refused. Seneca's later essay on leisure shows him wrestling with this, echoing Confucius. When the state is rotten, the wise don't waste their efforts. He realized too late, perhaps, that he could serve humanity in quiet ways, too, through his writing.
And this led to his famous realization about self-mastery.
The greatest empire is to be emperor of oneself. A profound insight, but clearly hard one for Seneca, forged through loss and compromise. It shows even a brilliant philosopher struggled immensely applying his ideals under the pressure of power.
His death itself is filled with drama and a kind of stoic dignity.
It is. Nero first tried to poison him, but Seneca's simple diet apparently saved him, later implicated, perhaps indirectly trying to shield others, in the Pisonian conspiracy against Nero. He was ordered to commit suicide.
And it wasn't easy.
No, poison failed again. He eventually had his veins opened in a hot steam bath. Paintings often depict him calm, lecturing friends, finally achieving that perfect stoic composure he maybe struggled with in life. He requested a simple burial, no rites, showing he was thinking of his life's close.
Seneca's life is just so complex, a cautionary tale about compromise, but also a source of incredibly enduring and accessible stoic wisdom through his writings.
Absolutely. He shows the temptations of power, but also that self-mastery is a battle, won through both success and failure. His moral letters remain incredibly powerful.
From Seneca's complexity, we move to Gaius Rubelius Claudius, the Brave, another Stoic facing Nero's tyranny, but perhaps with less compromise.
Plautus, yes, closely linked to Musonius Rufus. Like many perceived threats, he was marked for death by Nero's paranoia.
He was exiled first.
Banished to Syria, along with his wife, children, and his teacher, Musonius Rufus. There, he lived under the shadow of inevitable execution, the sword of Damocles, but busied himself with philosophy.
So, like Agrippinus, he refused to let the threat disrupt his inner life or routine.
Exactly. He didn't let fear dictate his days. He continued his philosophical practices.
His end was particularly brutal, wasn't it? No chance for a dignified suicide.
Horrifically so. It happened quietly one afternoon in 62 AD. Nero's assassins arrived while Plautus was simply exercising. They cut him down immediately. A centurion delivered the killing blow. A court unit confirmed it.
And they took his head back to Nero.
A truly sadistic detail. They brought the severed head back, and Nero reportedly mocked it, saying something like, "Nero, why did you fear a man with such a nose?" Just utter depravity.
And Nero didn't stop there. He smeared his reputation afterwards.
Yes, wrote to the Senate claiming Plautus was unstable, a threat to Rome, the same tactic used against Rutilius Rufus. And the Senate, tragically, complied, posthumously expelling Plautus from their ranks to appease the tyrant.
Plautus represents that raw courage in the face of brutal, unjust power. His commitment to his principles, his routine, even knowing death was coming.
It makes him a kind of martyr to philosophical integrity. His quiet defiance was simply continuing to live virtuously, refusing to be broken internally, even as his body was destroyed, a powerful form of resistance.
Then there was Thrasea, the fearless, the senator who took a stand through conscientious objection.
Thrasea Paetus, Another Stoic senator in that tradition of Rutilius Rufus and Cato the Younger, using his position to fight corruption, he went after extortionist governors like Cassius Capto.
He also argued for mercy sometimes, like saving a poet from execution.
Yes, notably intervened in the Senate to argue for restraint, echoing Seneca's philosophical arguments on clemency, but Therese seemed to live it more consistently in public life.
His most famous act was withdrawing from the Senate.
His defining moment, he simply walked away when it became clear the Senate was just a rubber stamp for Nero's tyranny past helping. He lived in semi-retirement for 3 years, studying Cato, knowing full well this act of dissent would likely cost him his life. It was an active moral protest.
He made other deliberate gestures of objection, too.
Yes, conspicuously refusing to attend Nero's wedding celebrations or refusing to offer the customary prayers for the emperor in the Senate. Very bold, Agrippinus-like statements of principle.
When the death sentence inevitably came, how did he face it?
With complete resolve. He even stopped a young colleague, Arulinus Rusticus, who was Junius Rusticus's grandfather, from trying to intervene and risk his own life. Thrasea, like Cato, believed his duty was simply to bear whatever fate would bring.
And his death was dignified.
Calm, clear-headed. He opened his veins, poured a ritual libation to Jupiter the Deliverer, and reportedly continued discussing the nature of the soul with friends as he bled out. Tacitus, the historian, recorded it, noting that with Thrace's death, it felt like the whole Stoic school was put on trial.
Thrasea really exemplifies that principled dissent within a corrupt system. The courage to walk away, the dignity in facing the consequences.
An enduring symbol of Stoic fearlessness and commitment to truth, even when it means death. His courage wasn't in fighting, but in the integrity of his stand.
Following Thrasea, we have Helvidius Priscus, the senator, who kept fighting the good fight in public service.
Helvidius Priscus, yeah. He came from humble beginnings but rose high in Roman government. He was deeply connected to Thrasea.
He was there at Thracea's suicide.
Yes, assisted him in the act, which predictably led to his own banishment by Nero, sent off to Macedonia with his wife and children.
But unlike Rutilius Rufus, Helvidius came back after Nero's death.
He did, maybe a bit naive, hoping for a better era under the new emperor Galba. He seems to have had more faith, perhaps, in Rome's institutions.
Did things improve for him?
Not really. He immediately tried to impeach Appius Marcellus, the man who persecuted Thrasea, but the corruption was too entrenched. He then spent years in principled opposition to a string of emperors, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, Vespasian.
Constantly clashing over principles, like senatorial power.
Exactly. Especially over the Senate's control of imperial finances. He found himself in these endless series of unresolved but exhausting battles of wills. He just wouldn't back down on principle.
Which eventually led to
his execution. Vespasian, the emperor at the time, finally got tired of being toyed with and undermined by Helvidius's constant opposition and ordered his death. Vespasian had apparently kept him close by in exile before that, almost like a death row holding cell.
But his legacy endured, inspiring others later.
Yes, his wife commissioned writings celebrating his life. Figures like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius admired him, and much later, Senator Robert Byrd cited him when protesting presidential power in the U.S. Helvidius represents that relentless dedication to public service and justice, even when facing defeat after defeat against autocratic power.
His story teaches that steadfastness itself, just refusing to give up the fight for principle, is a powerful act of courage.
Definitely. A lifetime of principled resistance.
Now let's turn to Musonius Rufus, the Roman Socrates, a teacher who really focused on practical application. Why Roman Socrates?
Musonius Rufus flourished in the 1st century A.D., though his exact dates are tricky. Like Socrates, he drew crowds who listened intently, wrestling with his ideas, not just there for entertainment. His reputation was for deep teaching, dialogue, self-examination.
And he held some very progressive views for his time, especially about women.
Incredibly progressive for 1st century Rome, his most provocative idea was that women deserved an education as much as men.
How did he argue that?
In his surviving lectures, he asserts that women have the same capacity for reason, the same eagerness and a natural inclination towards virtue as men. Therefore, they need and deserve the same philosophical training.
That's remarkable. And his view of marriage.
Also very modern, he saw it as a perfect companionship and mutual love where the couple should strive to outdo each other in devotion. He pointed to Brutus and his wife Portia as an ideal.
Like Cleanthes before him, Musonius emphasized hard work and endurance.
Absolutely. Hard work and endurance were core teachings. He praised manual labor, saying very little was beneath our dignity. He taught that hardship is inevitable, and enduring it for the sake of virtue strengthens us. He'd point out what people endure for unworthy ends, obsession, profit, fame, to motivate enduring hardship for the right reasons.
And he certainly faced his share of hardship, multiple exiles.
Repeatedly. First exiled with Plautus to Syria, where he advised Plautus to face death bravely and was likely there at the end. Then banished by Nero to the barren island of Gyara. Finally, personally exiled by Vespasian later in life.
How did he cope with exile? Did he despair?
Not Musonius. He saw it as a test, an opportunity to live his teachings. On dry, desolate Gyara, he famously found an underground spring, becoming a hero to his fellow exiles. He defied a cynic philosopher while digging on a chain gang, basically saying, "Why does it bother you if I improve this place for Greece?"
Ooh, he even argued exile could be a good thing.
Counterintuitive, right? But yes. He cited Diogenes the Cynic, transformed by exile, said it could strengthen the unhealthy by forcing a simpler, more austere lifestyle. He truly believed you could make the best of any situation.
Building that inner citadel.
Exactly. Reason was the medicine, creating that rock-hard, unbreakable citadel of a soul. He actively sought discomfort, even when not in exile, cold heat, hard beds to train himself to be ready for any task.
His principles made him fearless towards power.
Completely indifferent to who was emperor, he risked his life trying to mediate between warring factions during a civil war, throwing himself into the fray. He prosecuted a Stoic informant, Publius Ignatius Sulla, showing his commitment to justice above personal connections.
He even lectured kings on how to rule.
Yes. His lecture that kings also should study philosophy advised a Syrian king on self-control, justice, the dangers of excess. His core message: is it possible for anyone to be a good king unless he is a good man? No, it is not possible. He wanted no reward, just for the king to heed the wisdom.
And crucially, he trained Epictetus.
Passing the torch. He made Epictetus the formidable teacher he became before Musonius himself likely faced his final exile and death under Emperor Domitian. Musonius really embodies that practical, resilient, inclusive stoicism, enduring hardship, fighting for justice, teaching wisdom, even from the margins.
Which brings us directly to his most famous student, Epictetus, the free man, the ultimate Stoic paradox, the slave who taught freedom.
It's such a powerful story. For centuries, wealthy Stoics wrote about freedom. Epictetus lived the absolute lack of it. Born into slavery around 55 AD in Hierapolis, his name literally means acquired one. Yet he became this timeless example of finding freedom internally, even in chains.
His early life was brutal under Roman law, that law preventing freedom before 30.
Lex alias centria, yes, stole decades of his life. And the irony is staggering. Augustus, advised by Stoics like Arius, passed that law. His owner, Epaphroditus, Nero's secretary, was abusive, casually cruel. Infamously twisted Epictetus's leg until it broke, leaving him permanently lame.
How did he process that kind of suffering and injustice?
It forged his core teaching. Life is like a play. You don't choose your role, slave, master, rich, poor, healthy, crippled. Your job, your business is simply to act well the character assigned you. This radical acceptance came directly from his utter lack of control over his external circumstances.
He saw the hypocrisy at Nero's court.
Witnessed the excess, the contradictions. It horrified him, solidified his resolve to live differently. He famously said, "It is better to starve to death in a calm and confident state of mind than to live anxiously amidst abundance." Seeing examples like Agrippinus probably reinforced his conviction. No man is a slave who is free in his will.
That's the core insight, isn't it? True slavery is mental.
Exactly. The real shame wasn't being physically enslaved, but handing over your mind, letting others dictate your emotions, your reactions. He called the philosopher's lecture hall a hospital, a place you should leave feeling the pain of confronting your flaws, not feeling entertained. For him and Musonius, the only power they truly had was over their own minds, their own character.
This leads directly to his most famous teaching, the dichotomy of control.
De ethemin, da ukethemin. What is up to us? What is not up to us? Our chief task in life, he said, is to identify in separate matters, distinguish between external things we can't control and the internal choices we do control. That's where our freedom lies.
And people listened. Powerful people traveled far to hear this former slave teach.
It's remarkable. He taught in Nicopolis, far from Rome, yet students flocked to him, including the future Emperor Hadrian and, most importantly for Stoicism's future, the young Marcus Aurelius.
He summed up his practical advice in 2 words.
Anashu and apexu. Persist and resist. These are the ingredients of freedom. Persist means endure what's outside your control, like slavery, illness, exile. Resist means fight against your own impulses, desires, and aversions that make you dependent on externals or lead you astray.
So the focus is internal ambition, mastering yourself.
Entirely. The greatest triumph isn't external success, it's mastering yourself, your limitations, temper, ego. He used the analogy of the Olympic Games for daily life, constantly training, striving for progress within yourself. He had little patience for abstract debates. He wanted practical strategies for living better, especially under tyranny, which is why he refused to write anything down himself.
His teachings survived thanks to his student Arian.
Yes, Arian meticulously recorded his lectures, publishing them as the discourses, and also created a shorter handbook, the Enchiridion.
Enchiridion meaning at hand, like a dagger.
Exactly. A manual, a defensive tool to have ready against life's challenges. Epictetus's final command sums it all up. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it.
He was the living embodiment. His life teaches that true freedom isn't about circumstance. It's about mastering what's within your mind, your reactions, your character. You can be free anywhere.
A profound legacy.
Next, Junius Rusticus, the dutiful. He connects directly to Marcus Aurelius, acting as his tutor. A parallel to Seneca and Nero.
A very compelling parallel, both Stoics drawn into tutoring future emperors, but a key difference. Rusticus seems to have been willing to deliver hard truths to Marcus, whereas Seneca perhaps compromised more with Nero.
And Marcus respected Rusticus for it, even when it was difficult.
Deeply. Marcus writes about being often upset with Rusticus, but never regretting taking his advice. He truly revered him, greeted him with a kiss, considered himself Rusticus's disciple, a very different dynamic than Seneca and Nero.
But Rusticus's legacy is complicated by one specific event, the trial of Justin Martyr.
Unfortunately, yes. As prefect of Rome, Rusticus presided over the trial and execution of Justin Martyr and 6 fellow Christians around 165 AD. A seemingly minor case at the time, but one with huge historical resonance.
A clash of worldviews. Justin expected better from a Stoic judge.
Justin had studied Stoicism before converting to Christianity, so maybe he did hope for understanding. But Rusticus saw things very differently. As a Roman magistrate, his duty was to uphold Roman law and maintain public order.
And the Christians' refusal to sacrifice to Roman gods was seen as
disruptive, dangerous. A refusal to acknowledge state authority. Rusticus seems to have been personally offended, frustrated by their insistence. Some argue the Roman persecution was primarily political. These strange Christian practices undermined the gods tied to the state's well-being. Rusticus was enforcing the law.
So it was duty versus, perhaps, empathy or understanding a different perspective.
That seems to be the tension. Rusticus was duty-bound to protect the peace. He couldn't understand Justin's unwavering faith, his rejection of the Roman gods. He insisted on compliance. Gather around then and with one accord offer sacrifice to the gods.
He couldn't see the bigger picture.
He focused on the clear legal violation. This adherence to the letter of the law, perhaps without broader understanding, led to this famous execution.
A martyrdom that became hugely significant later.
Exactly. Barely noticed at the time amidst plague and war, but it grew. Rusticus became a villain to millions, Justin a saint. Yet Marcus Aurelius honored Rusticus immensely after his death, ordering statues, recognizing his lifetime of public service and character. Marcus saw the whole man, not just this one difficult case. Rusticus's real monument is arguably the character of his student, Marcus Aurelius.
Rusticus's story is a stark reminder of the moral complexities faced by Stoics in power. How duty, interpreted rigidly, can clash with compassion and lead to tragic outcomes.
It shows how even good intentions, focused narrowly on duty, can sometimes miss the bigger picture.
And finally, we reach the culmination, in many ways. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, Plato's dream realized.
For centuries, it was the ideal, a truly wise ruler wielding supreme power. Stoics had advised emperors, hoped for better ones, but none had been one. Marcus Aurelius, born 121 AD, was the exception.
Emperor Hadrian saw his potential early.
Yes, Hadrian needed an heir and saw something special in young Marcus. From age 10 or 11, Marcus was already drawn to philosophy, dressing simply, sleeping on a hard plank bed to toughen himself up. He listed his own goals, his epithets: upright, modest, straightforward, sane, cooperative, disinterested. Hadrian sensed this deep commitment and adopted him, setting him on the path to rule.
But Marcus wasn't exactly thrilled about becoming emperor.
Remarkably, no. Sources say he was greatly saddened rather than overjoyed when adopted. He seemed to prefer a life of philosophy or writing. Dismayed at moving to the palace, worried about the corrupting influence of power, listing all the evil things that kings had done.
So the big question is, how did he resist that corruption? How did he remain arguably a good man despite having absolute power?
Our sources basically say, Stoicism, it was this utterly anomalous event in human history, and philosophy seems the only explanation. But crucially, it wasn't automatic. It was conscious, deliberate work.
He had to constantly remind himself.
Yes. He wrote in his private journal, the Meditations, things like, "Take care not be Caesarified or dyed in purple. Strive hard to remain the same man that philosophy wished to make you. Constant vigilance against the temptations of power."
His first act as emperor was extraordinary too, sharing power.
Unprecedented. In 161 AD, he voluntarily named his adoptive brother, Lucius Verus, co-emperor, sharing half his absolute power. An incredible act of humility, showing he wasn't power-hungry. King George III was reportedly amazed when George Washington gave up power. Marcus did something similar right at the start.
And he faced immense challenges with stoic poise, the plague.
The devastating Antonine Plague swept the empire. Marcus stayed in Rome, didn't flee for safety. Like the British royals during the Blitz, his presence reassured the people. He showed his responsibilities came before his personal safety.
Financial crises, too.
When the treasury was empty from plague and constant wars on the frontier, he refused to just raise taxes or loot the provinces. Instead, he held a public auction in the Forum, selling off imperial treasures, jewels, robes, artworks to fund the state. He even offered to buy items back later if people wanted. He told the Senate, "We are so far from possessing anything of our own that even the house in which we live is yours." Incredible integrity.
The historian Herodian praised his character above all else.
Yes. Alone of the emperors, he gave proof of his learning not by mere words or knowledge of philosophical doctrines, but by his blameless character and temperate way of life. But he was human. He wept for his dying tutor, cried in court hearing about plague victims. His virtue wasn't effortless. He worked his way there.
And he believed others could do it too.
That's his empowering message. Recognize that if it's humanly possible, you can do it too. He faced corruption, plague, war, betrayal, and showed it's possible to navigate it all virtuously.
His meditations were his private tool for this, keeping his ego in check.
Exactly. Reminding himself constantly that fame is fleeting. Everything fades so quickly, turns into legend, and soon oblivion covers it. He'd reflect that Alexander the Great and his mule driver ultimately share the same fate and death. Perspective.
We have to acknowledge his flaws, though. The persecution of Christians happened under his reign.
A definite stain, yes, on both him and Rusticus, although some early Christian writers actually saw Marcus as a protector compared to others. His improvements for slaves were incremental, not radical. He certainly held views about barbarians common to his time, and his choice of his son Commodus as successor proved disastrous.
But overall,
Within the context of absolute power in that era, the historian Dio Cassius's verdict seems fair. He ruled better than any others who had ever been in any position of power.
his leadership style was pragmatic stoicism in action.
The cucumber is bitter. Then throw it out. There are brambles in the path, then go around. Don't fight reality unnecessarily. Build your life action by action. Accept obstacles. Shift focus to what you can control. Always act with justice, self-control, wisdom. He truly tried to live Musonius Rufus's command. A good king must first be a good man.
Did he try to improve things for slaves, perhaps inspired by Epictetus?
He did take steps protecting their rights in court, forbidding arbitrary capital punishment, making cruel treatment a crime, incremental but significant progress, possibly influenced by his reading of Epictetus.
He spent much of his reign literally living that line, life is warfare and a journey far from home.
12 years fighting on the Danube frontier, a harsh reality. Yet when he returned briefly to Rome, he showed immense generosity, forgiving massive public debts by burning the records in the Forum.
And his death. How did he face the end?
With stoic grace. Died at 58, likely from the plague, on the battlefield in Germania, far from home. Said a tearful goodbye to his son Commodus, partly to prevent spreading the illness, partly to ensure a smooth succession.
And his final words to his grieving friends.
Pure stoicism. Why do you weep for me instead of thinking about the pestilence and about death, which is the common lot of us all? Then a calm farewell. If you now grant me leave to go, I bid you farewell and pass on before.
Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king embodied, showing that self-mastery and virtue can coexist with ultimate power, leaving that incredible legacy in his actions and his private thoughts.
A testament to the power of philosophy consciously applied day after day under the most intense pressure imaginable. His life teaches that the greatest empire truly is the one you build inside yourself. Hashtag, tag, tag, outro.
Wow. Okay, so we've journeyed through, what, 2.5 millennia of Stoic lives?
Yeah.
From Zeno getting shipwrecked to Marcus Aurelius dying on the frontier.
It's been quite the deep dive, and the point wasn't just ancient history, was it? It was about uncovering this philosophy that really tries to define how to live.
And the consistent theme, it seems, the thread running through almost all these figures, is action. Stoicism is something you do.
Exactly. It's a philosophy of action and lived experience. You mentioned Socrates earlier, practicing philosophy everywhere, joking, drinking, fighting, in the market, even under arrest. The Stoics really followed that model,
They proved they were philosophers by their deeds, not just their words.
often writing their best work, as one source put it, through their actions, their choices, sometimes literally in their own blood.
Which brings us back to that insight from Marcus Aurelius. There is no role so well suited to philosophy as the one you happen to be in right now. That feels incredibly relevant.
It applies to everyone listening right now. Whatever your role is, parent, spouse, employee, boss, citizen, just someone stuck in traffic or hearing good news or bad news, that is your philosophical arena. That's where you practice.
And we've seen these Stoics weren't perfect saints either. They were human.
Definitely. Tempted by wealth like Seneca, making embarrassing compromises, losing their tempers, maybe lying sometimes, political maneuvering like Arius, being silent when maybe they should have spoken up.
So the lesson isn't about achieving some impossible perfection.
No, I think the enduring lesson is about their lifelong effort, the struggle, and what you can learn from both their successes and their failures in that constant pursuit of virtue.
It comes back to Epictetus's challenge then.
His ultimate challenge and invitation. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That's the call to action right now for you.
So maybe a final thought to leave people with. The Stoics said, every one of us dies, but too few of us actually live.
Yeah, that chilling idea that too many of us are, like Seneca described, living a life hardly different from death, going through the motions unthinkingly.
The Stoics, through their lives, tried to teach us the art of going out well. So the question for you, listening now, is, are you truly living, fully, actively, thoughtfully, intentionally?
Or just existing. It's a challenge to reflect on your own art of going out well, starting with the choices, the actions you make today.